through the chat to try to find those questions. So please just put them in all caps. I do want to state that the virtual readings gallery is a safe space. Any user exhibiting offensive, hateful, or inappropriate behavior will be dismissed from the event immediately. So, and now a little bit about our moderator this evening. Chef Christy Fox is co-owner and executive chef of Evolve Chocolate Plus Cafe, which is deliciously perched on the mezzanine level of Village Books and Paper Dreams in Fairhaven. She is also the co-owner of Evolve Espresso Plus Provisions, newly opened in downtown Bellingham in the Hotel Leo. So congratulations on that to her and her partner Shannon, her wife slash partner Shannon, as they embark on 2 locations in Bellingham. Chef Christy is a true artist who puts her very heart and soul into her food, and it shows with every single dish. And now, our featured author, Gigi Berardi, is a professor at Western Washington University and a freelance writer. She maintains the popular food blog FoodWISE and Food Resilience Vlog, and she's written numerous articles for general and scientific audiences alike. She's here this evening to present her book, her award-winning book, which I will let her tell you about, FoodWISE, A Whole Systems Guide to Sustainable and Delicious Food Choices. So please join me from your home or wherever you happen to be. Join me in welcoming Christy Fox and Gigi Berardi.
Oh, thank you, Claire. We tossed a coin, and I'm going to go first. But Christy is running the show tonight, and I am so grateful for that. But I just wanted to thank Chef Christy Fox, who can be found usually in a kitchen. And also a big thank you to Claire, the events coordinator extraordinaire of Village Books, our go-to independent bookstore. And I just wanted to give a shout out to indie bookstores and indie cafes, and as Evolve is, and indie publishers. And my publisher, North Atlantic Books, is an independent publisher. Penguin Random House, one of the 5 giants, and I guess soon to be one of the 4 giants, is the distributor. But anyway, and just wanted to thank Village Books again for sponsoring and mentoring and hosting and supporting so many writers, including our very own Wacom writers and publishers. So anyway, I asked Christy if I could say just a few things about stories. So I know some of you have heard me talk. Some of you have heard me talk a lot. And thank you for reading my work. And the work I do is story writing and storytelling. And in the book, I say I like to gain food experiences through stories, through the stories of my friends. Why is this a favorite food? What brought them to this particular recipe? So as I look at Chef Christy Fox and Shannon Fox's work and menu, for example, I see pints of soup and chopped salad and 85% chocolate, my favorite, gluten-free, vegan cake, and hummus that goes under the name Greek layer dip. So there's stories there, and baked tomato in tahini sauce stuffed with organic brown rice with pine nuts and rose water and golden raisins. So I thank these 2 chefs for those stories. But for all of us, a bit of a story or a little humor, and this is a quote from the book, and music go a long way. And so I looked for the word story, like how many times does the word story or stories appear in FoodWISE, this book about making wise food choices. And so I saw in the endorsements, I saw even hungrier for the full story about the staples of life. So Chuck Geisler at Cornell said that. And then another colleague talked about through the deeply personal principles, stories, and recipes she shares with us in every page of this life-affirming book. And that was Michael Appleby, Sir Michael Appleby, who is a professor in Edinburgh, and he is in the International Center for Animal Welfare Education. Now, I had a lot of stories in here in the beginning of the book, and a lot of them were about food poisoning. And I love these stories because I survived. But my daughter said, you can't just tell people these terrible stories. You can't. You have to have like some positive stories in here about your food. And so I was made sure, after all the stories about the Sandinistas in Nicaragua and whatever, and hiring the elephant when I had amoebic dysentery. Anyway, I did see. Fortunately, all these stories ended on a happy note. I fully recovered. So that was for my daughter. But really, stories that don't quite go the way we want to, just like recipes, as Chef Christy knows, become adventures and lovely products in themselves. And besides our local chefs, of course, M.F.K. Fisher, who wrote so many books on making do with very little, and Tamara Adler, the author of An Everlasting Meal, specialized in how to turn your disasters into something beautiful. So in the book, I also talk about the origin story of cheese, and I talk about other people's stories too, as told by people like Liz Carlisle talking about lentils in Montana, revitalizing a local food economy. And the conclusion of my book, and I'll stop here, is I write, I explain some of my own values and where they come from in the stories woven through the book. I like tomatoes. I like milking sheep. I like most any farms that are smaller than mega-sized. You don't have to. But those values of mine help explain my views of other things I talk about in this book. And if you empathize with me, you'll understand what I'm getting at, and it may push you along on your own journey. So anyway, thank you, Chef Christy, for letting me say a few words about stories.
Yes, of
And
course. Life is about stories. It's important that we have them, and we derive our food from stories. At least most of us, I believe we do. So it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for asking me to join you. I loved your book. I loved it's something that I embody every day in my life, in the choices, not always the best choices. I'm human, as we all are. But the principles that are behind the book are that of what I've done in my career for 30 years, and that evolving learning lesson of choosing the right thing and asking the deeper questions of why, where does it come from, and how does that make me feel, and what is the grander, the grander goal. I'm happy to be here.
nice.
Yes. So there's a button, if you guys see, purchase FoodWISE here. You can click that button and purchase Gigi's book. If you haven't read it, I would highly suggest that you do.
Thank you.
Yes. So one of my favorite stories about you is your cheese making story. And one of the first things that I met you, you had come in with a sister after you were coming in to see us. And if you remember, that was a little bit, maybe a year or so ago. And you came in to introduce yourselves and to talk about what you did at the Abbey. Maybe if you could kind of share a little bit more about that story again, because that was a very profound moment for me. And I say that because in my career of 30 years, one of the things that I've always said is that you have to be attached to something that you do. You have to be, it's food, right? It's life. And it's a life force. And your coming and talking about cheese really affected me that day and continues to. And so I think it's a story that that you should share, if you will.
Oh, the story of cheese is so
Cheese!
so
How milk has
amazing.
become cheese.
Yeah. So one of the things I say, I know that many of my students have a diversity of food preferences, and I really wrote the book to kind of honor and address the different food preferences that are out there and how we can possibly make choices with all the information. And anyway, cheese though is special. Most people who make cheese wax super eloquently about it, and they get a little emotional about it because the transformation of milk into solid curds is miraculous. It's hard to think of a better adjective. And can I just say that this summer I had the experience of teaching the cheese course. I teach the art and science of cheese with a good friend who's a toxicologist, and the enrollment was bursting. It was a huge enrollment in COVID
It's cheese.
times.
It's supposed to be.
And the challenge was, how do you make cheese when you don't have all the equipment? Like when you completely strip it down, and can you only make soft cheeses, which are kind of simple, relatively speaking, acid coagulated cheeses. In the book, I talk about the origin story of cheese and how undoubtedly some traveler, no doubt a woman, was had some milk, some liquid milk in a bag made of leather that had some lining in it from the ruminant, and the enzymes in that at the end of the journey had curdled the milk into a solid. And what happens is, if it is as simple as that, the transformation of milk into cheese, and what happens is that the magic is in the aging, is actually in the aging. It's not a question of how long something ages. So old is not necessarily gold. I learned that. I was very lucky to be able to study affinage in France with the Mons family.
Lucky woman you were.
I did. I took the course in French, which meant that I understood approximately 3% of what happened, but I could see, and I definitely had to observe keenly, and there was one person in particular. His name was Roman, and he could tell as the cheeses were coming in that had only been aged for a couple of days from the different dairies, the different creameries. He could tell exactly what that aging process would look like, and what the product what the cheese would become, and whether or not he could accept it or not. Because so anyway, their cheese begs lots and lots of innovation and observation. Cheese is in effect a great revealer of attention deficit, because this is why I feel that it should be a required course, an entry course for all this 18,000 students at Western, because for one thing, it focuses us, because once the temperature rises past the 86 degrees or 92 degrees for thermophilic bacteria, bacteria, then it takes hours to get it down. If you're like texting or making a Facebook post and not paying attention, and I don't heat the whey that I've drained from the curds to 195 degrees immediately, I will lose the acid, and I will lose 2 pounds of ricotta. I will get nothing. And so sometimes the students have just like little smears of cheese to show because the acidity was too low. And anyway, so So in terms of lifelong lessons and themes, cheese is quite incredible. And of course, I'm very lucky because I make cheese from the sheep that
Ah,
I own. And my cheese is sheep cheese. And I see some people here from Weston A. Price Foundation, and the director there has her own actually dairy farm, and I'm very, very, very fortunate. But the students have great success when they use a non-homogenized. So once again, it comes down to the W and Y's, whole food, and
right.
being informed, and the sustainable grazing practices. They go to Twin Brook, they get Larry's milk, and they usually have no problems, even though it's not raw milk. My cheeses are raw milk. And so the cheese nun was interested in cheese making in terms of the microbiology, the diversity of the biome in the caves at Regina Laudis in Connecticut. But then she had a
Fascinating.
Fulbright scholarship. And she went to France for 3 years to study the microbiology, the diversity of the caves there. Now, she joined the Abbey at a time in the 60s of great, quote unquote, social ferment, where many young women wanted to be in a community of women and a progressive women, basically. And this is how she and her colleagues ended up at this abbey in the 1960s. Her brother took a different route, Giacomo Marcellini, and he was, oh my gosh, he was at Woodstock. He was in Sha Na Na. He was in Sha Na Na. A very interesting family. Everyone,
Wow.
he was a rocker, and she was a cloistered nun, contemplative nun. Anyway, and then she became a cause celeb because of the research she was doing on wood and the importance of wood. So once again,
Yeah.
whole systems. You can't go wrong using that as a touchstone.
Amazing what tutelage that you have had, and the lessons of, as getting older doesn't mean that you're getting old. It means that you're getting better. You're ripening, right? As in cheese, we're ripening as we get older, better.
Yeah.
Hopefully not
Whoops.
crusty, but
I'm
getting better.
having a moment here. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Tell me about being a foodie from a chef's perspective. I crack up when I hear those words because I use it too. To me, the base of what you write about, FoodWISE, right? Whole foods. It is the natural way it's always been. Right? You're purchasing food, or you're going to your local farmer, you're going to your local dairyman, you're going to your local rancher, and you're creating an intentional food. When did Foodie become that thing? Why is what we have always done now become Foodie? And the basic principles of life, it's FoodWISE. This book is the basic principles of life.
Yeah. Do you mean, that's beautifully said? Do you mean for me, or do you think like
Yeah, for you.
for me?
For you. Yeah, for you.
Well, for me, I never knew anything other than foodie ism because I grew up in a traditional Italian family. And I see my sister on here, and she's like, yeah.
Hi, sister.
And yeah, hi, sister. And food was everything. And so my father was involved, and my mother was involved, and my mother learned everything she did from her mother-in-law, my father's mother, and it was an act of love. It was an act of love, and it was an act of caring. And my challenge was, with my busy life, how do I carry that forward? And right now, at this moment, I have to say I'm lucky. So perhaps you can relate, Christy, to have a life partner who shares that love also of food preparation. I mean, it's a little bit different for you. You are serving food. This is like truly your profession, as well as an avocation, as well as your, the theme of your life on a personal level. I mean, for me, I guess it would be the cheese, which I don't really sell, which I don't sell. Let me make it clear, but I give.
If you did, I'd be like, me, cheese for me.
Yeah. I owe you too. I know that.
Teach me.
Yeah.
Just teach me. I'm good with that.
Okay. That's serotonin rush. Yeah. So I'm so lucky that we share this Lisa, me too. Lisa Daly, shout out. Sidekick Press. Thank you. And in fact, look at this right here. I get to put a little announcement in, maybe, if that Crowdcast says, I already sent that message. Oh my gosh. Okay, so that's exciting. So anyway, there's a little note about my website that Lisa has resuscitated here and developed. Lisa Daly, Sidekick Press. Thank you so much. And I also see Holly and Dan on here, my partners in crime on Instagram. So all of these people, by the way, who I've just called out, are big foodies, and yeah, you're on the list. You're on the list for cheese. I maybe one question is, like, how did college happened? And like, really, you're a foodie in college? Well, now people are. Yes, that was not a thing when I was in college. People weren't foodies, and I went to UC San Diego, and mostly we were just like, I found a bathroom.
We lost Gigi for the moment. She'll come back with her story about how she gained being a foodie in college.
She'll be back. This is where you and I are supposed to do like our little soft shoe routine. This is where you're supposed to start dancing, Christy.
Oh yes. That's
singing.
That's so something. Oh yeah.
She actually will be back, folks. She will. Sometimes this happens. It's the magic of the internet.
Welcome to our life in 2020, right? I mean, it's as unpredictable as everything. So you just wait for it. Just wait for it. Just wait for it.
Well, hey, this gives me the opportunity to say that thing that I forgot to say at the very beginning, that in my intro, I actually had in red and bold-faced and still managed to skip over it, which is that center screen, there's a green button that says purchase FoodWISE here. So if everybody clicks on that, and it will take you straight to the Village Books website, where you can find FoodWISE. You can purchase it from Village Books. We happen to have signed copies. Gigi was kind enough to provide us with these beautiful signed book plates that have little messages in each one. So our copies are signed. She's back. And also there's a link to Evolve's website, because I'll tell you what, if you are looking for the best gift for someone for the holidays, if you were to give them a copy of FoodWISE and a gift card to Evolve, you would be the favorite of all of the gift givers in the family. So, okay, well, welcome back, Gigi.
Hi. Yeah. So look, I was just going to say that at that point, my interest in food and like people's lack of food joined. And Frances Moore Lappé had just written Diet for a Small Planet, and I was captivated by that book. And at that point, I became a vegetarian for 7 years, until I had a Fulbright in Italy to study food. And was living with farmers and had to partake of what they were offering me. But anyway, so issues of food security, but on a world level, became up front and center. And I edited a book that Frances Moore Lappé did the foreword to, called World Food Population Development. So kind of rekindled that interest in food.
I love what food brings us together in all the different worlds. Like we were speaking about earlier, that, we come from very different backgrounds, obviously. I started off right out of high school, went to culinary school, in search of a place of belonging, and what was that? And the culinary world, every day, every year, every month, spanning 30 years, a new door opened, a new way to look through it and to identify myself and to identify with society, or with in past traditions or in future traditions. And it's the binder of what whole food is, right? As your book, and life, that we are all one whole unit, and we choose those choices to come together and do it wholly, and do it well, and do it authentically. I love your recipes in the back of your book. Where did you write them? Is that just something that your sister, when you guys were growing up, is that from family stuff, or?
Well, I have to tell you, the recipes was interesting because it had to follow the WISE. And originally, oh my God, Erin. Yeah, I will. Anyway, WISE, and I'm like I have a salmon pate, like Lisa mentioned, the website gigiberardi.com. That's to sign up to get recipes and also for book giveaways. But anyway, thank you, North Atlantic Books. But anyway, and one of the recipes, if you sign up, is the salmon pate. And I just couldn't wrap my head around the gelatin. And we tried with agar, and, is that a whole food gelatin? Well, I don't know if you kill most people are not into that. They don't have like the backyard livestock, except for my roommate in college. So Erin asks about the goat. No kidding. So my roommate in college, one of them was Italian, but she really was Italian. Like her parents, my grandparents were born in Italy. Her parents came from Verbigaro, this little town in southern Italy. Super legit. And so on Union Street, right? Did I say Union Street? On Union Street in San Francisco, like not in the hinterlands. They had building a house, kind of house and the roof, they had a goat. I don't know. This is not going to be a good story for vegetarians, but like they had a full-on goat at so the point is, if one is into that, where there's a will, there's
always a way.
Yeah. That's right. To hang on to your family traditions. Yeah. And your cultural building and maintaining, page 1. Yeah, I know. Your cultural identity, much less pocketbook. It was pretty inexpensive meat if one was going to eat meat. Yeah. That's a great question.
I love it.
But there's more. She also fried, Erin, she also fried vegetables in an electric skillet, if anyone remembers those, and the oil would spatter all over. I'm not saying this is an Italian thing necessarily, but anyway, it would spatter all over the walls, and my other roommates. Yeah, Claire, I know. It's a mess. My other roommates didn't think that was really funny. They weren't. No.
And your mom didn't use what was that little strainer thing that you throw at the top of this little fry thing?
I know.
Keep it from splattering, that thing that went over it.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was a mess. Okay, so you don't need to be, well, I don't know. Probably not just Italian, yeah.
What drove you to write FoodWISE? What propelled you?
You know what? This kind of gets into a writing and publishing question, and I bet I'm going to have the opportunity to talk about this a little bit more if I have a chance to address the Whatcom writers and publishers. But I had a sabbatic in 2012 and 2013, and oops. Boom. Let me undress for you. 2012 and 2013. And to write a book about food that was going to be a part memoir, that was going to be memoir and recipes, basically. And that I really struggled with that book. And I pitched it to a lot of agents, and people said, "Oh, the writing's okay, but like it's just not like so interesting. Universal ideas here." The other thing was that other book was based heavily in and on food psychology, so the psychology of eating. So
Mm-hmm.
if you have a red plate but with a white rim, are people going to eat more food or less food? Or in a school cafeteria, if you put this here, but then anyway. So
Yeah.
and that work was actually recanted. It was very, all academic work. I had even gone to Cornell University. I won't mention, you can just email me privately, who the academics were who were involved. And so I kind of went off that. And then in one of my global learning programs, so I'm very lucky, I teach eco-gastronomy courses in Switzerland and in Florence in Italy and in Mexico. So in
Oh, wow.
2017, I did these eco-gastronomy gastronomy courses with Dan Nestle and Holly Nestle, and uh, I was coming back, and that year I'd actually done in the academic year 2 of them. I was coming back from Mexico, and the person that I was kind of co-teaching with said, "I have a publisher friend, and they're looking for a food book."
Mm.
And that was in 2017. So I resuscitated the book, and originally it wasn't just memoir. That food psychology piece was addressing fierce food beliefs
Mm-hmm.
we have about food. And anyway, I pitched the first 2 chapters, and they were like, "Yeah, we're good, but can you rewrite this second chapter on agriculture?" Well, it took me all academic year to have time to finish the second chapter. So in 2018 in June in Italy, I finished the second chapter, sent it to them. I got the book contract in August of 2018, and I was on my way to Switzerland for another sabbatic in
Wow.
September. And so I put the book together in July and in August, left in September, finished a draft in February of 2019 and sent it in. And the draft I sent in was just a draft. And they must have read a paragraph in the first chapter that was reasonably well written and said, "Okay, we'll just put this in galleys." And that's what they did. They put a draft of the book, which was not ready to be set into galleys, in galleys. So I spent the next 6 months editing from a PDF,
Oh,
meaning
Lord.
every single edit, maybe 1,500 edits, had to be written out, like every period, the old sentence written out, period added, new sentence written in. It was ridiculous. Anyway, and so I really didn't finish that until the end of September of 2019, and the book was out in January of 20.
Wow. Kudos to you. Kudos to you. It takes so much work to put down to pen, and to many times of correction to get your point across, and all that you've learned, and all that you teach, and all that you travel and become more informed, and that you inform your students and the people. Since the book has come out, have you evolved? Have you seen change from the effects of writing the book and your awareness to what's in front of you now?
So, yes. And let me just say, it sounds like I'm a walking advertisement, but Darren Brown from Trinidad Tobago, who has an administrative position. He's a videographer at Western. He is doing a film on the book, which will be out sometime next year. But the theme of that has been, what have I learned? what, especially in COVID.
Mhm.
And I mean, one of the things I've done is just experience people talking and crying and screaming, but mostly talking and writing about issues around getting good food, especially now in COVID on a consistent basis. And one of my themes in the book is pretty much we just need to be talking to each other. We just
Yeah.
need to be talking to each other. And anything that is polarizing, I'm not signing up for. I mean, I do have a bottom line. So in terms of my evolution, it's how difficult it is to get to the table. I do have a bottom line. Like, I'm not going to start talking about torture and perspective or something, and slave trades. No, but but we
That's
have
a
a lot
future
of
book.
we have a lot of challenges in this county. I'm in Whatcom County. Not everyone is in Whatcom County, nor on the West Coast. Hi, Deb. But there's a lot of polarizing forces in the county, and I can't abide by it. That doesn't mean I'm not outspoken. I am. But I can't abide by it because look what happened in not this election, but the previous election. And I think a piece of that is not talking to each other. And so just it's a challenge. So I don't know. The other thing is I'm just constantly struck by just doing a little piece, as I don't know, I have like one little thing here from the book, I think. Yeah. So this is like what I say. So with FoodWISE, you've learned some guidelines, and I hope you can follow them. I believe it is possible to live a FoodWISE life, at least try, because that is where we need to be. If everyone is trying much of the time, then we're going to get there.
Right.
And before that, I ask in the book, I talk about good enough, but there's also good enough. 30% FoodWISE over a whole day, a whole month. What about just sometimes? Evolve Cafe once a month, once a week, whatever. Or just when we're eating at home, or just when we get paid. Are there some situations where it makes sense to choose sane over sustainable when we're eating out with friends? Well, yes. And the example I think of is the takeaway lesson from the women's self-defense class I once completed, Just Run. So in the 6-week-long course, I learned lots of moves. At the end, I asked, if someone is coming at me, which move do I use? How do I decide? Which one's the most effective? I've been in here for 6 weeks. And the instructor's response to me was, you just run. You run. That's the first thing you do. It's an instinctive thing. It's like once I took a fear of flying class just to do it with U.S. Air or something. And anyway, it was at TradeCon. We were in TradeCon in LAX, and the last night was we're on an airplane, and we're on the runway, and it's taking off, and they're like, VO2 max, blah 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 blah, and then they abort, and I'm like, okay, what happens if there's a fire? And anyway, my point is this: that you always have to just keep asking these hard questions, but it might be just the obvious, and then everything else is part of a process. I notice here a really good question.
Yes, it's a great question.
Did you see that? The one area of research that went into this book that you wish you had had more time to study, or what topic would you like to revisit? in future writings. Lamai, it is exactly what I was talking about when Christy asked me about the evolution, and that is the community of farmers in Whatcom County, and community of farm workers and farm worker advocates. And I'm super interested. I'm super interested in the competing and conflicting narratives there, and working with people with students in particular, and my colleagues in nonprofit organizations to look at the research that we need to do and how thorough the research needs to be before we can contribute productively to those narratives. And it's part of getting everyone to the table when everything leading up to that one moment has been so divisive, and trying to offer guidelines.
Great question. So what's next for Whatcom County? Are you gonna come and are you gonna touch in with restaurants? Are you gonna come see us professionally and talk about FoodWISE with us professionally?
Well,
and share those
yes.
insights. Yeah.
So Washington State is so particular. It's so interesting. It is a very special and exciting state to be living in for a variety of reasons. And one of them has to do with foodies, the relative percentage of foodies, if I may, in Whatcom County and in the state. And so at least 7% of sales of food is direct sales. So that would be markets, farmers markets, directly marketed food, CSAs, and that's really exciting. It means that the ground is fertile here for farm to table. So farms are important, and tables are important, and of course, I would like to offer and learn and listen these FoodWISE guidelines, yes, in restaurants, and I would like us supporting the work of making those connections the restaurants are doing of farm to table, and cafeterias and hospitals and other institutions. And it's really important. And I was on some group, and I'm trying to be a contributing member of as many groups in Whatcom County as I can, that said that they had just gotten their so-called Christmas meal from Evolve Cafe, chocolate and cafe. You better get yours before you run out of meals. And I just think that it's really all about leveraging, especially I think about my students, definitely on tight budgets. And it's all about leveraging. Frequently I get the question, well, I'm a busy, working father. I've got 2 kids, what can I cook for my kids tonight? And I think what I love to do is get the entree at Evolve, and then I make my own rice and beans. I make my own, take the turkey carcass and simmer it in the rice, do these crazy, I just experiment, but I don't, it helps me that I am making some choices about working, and then I can get my entrees here. I can get my salads at the co-op and support the co-op. Not everyone needs to do that, but I'm certainly in the position where I want to.
think so many people can support so much. You can support financially. You may not feel that buying directly from farmers or being able to maybe come to us or other places, but you can pick and choose, and that's a great option to be able to say, I'm going to go do this one thing, but I'm going to make a salad at home, I'm going to do this, and combine them, and then you have the whole picture, literally the whole picture together. I think it's awesome. It's a great way for people.
Yeah, I mean, and in that idea of just a little bit, or just like, what's the essence sustainable? What am I going to do? Less trips to the supermarket,
Right.
walk. I don't know, little things like bring your own bag, except not right now. That, just like even in the book, I say opening up a can of soup and adding pepper. Adding some spice to it, probably not salt, but anyway, pepper is cooking in my book. Do you want to cook like that all the time? And no, but if you do cook like that a lot, then I can spend my precious pennies on free range eggs or free range chicken.
That's right. And then you have room to experiment.
And experiment.
Yes. Gives you a moment of confidence, right? Experimentation is about confidence, and food is about confidence.
Yeah.
And being comfortable where you're coming from.
Yeah.
And it's definitely a life lesson, FoodWISE, for sure.
Yeah. Someone, I got a call from a student, and she was basically saying, how can I be like you? And
Awesome.
In terms of research with farmers. And I was, it was a little sobering, because I said, farmers are super busy people. And so, and she pushed. It was great. She wouldn't back down. She was like, hey, Gigi, you started somewhere. What for your masters, with the Amish farmers, what did you do? I wrote a letter. So I think just starting somewhere, whether it's interviewing farmers for your own research, you learn. And the next time, the next can of soup, that's not going to work. The milk, the pasteurized is not going to work. So buy the Twin Brook and just make less cheese. I don't know, except you'll make more because the yield will be greater because the fat content's higher, but whatever. So
there's no better instructor than the farmer or the rancher. Sorry to cut you off.
You'll learn.
Yeah. I learned, I was 17 when I started cooking, and I went to a formal culinary school and worked for some pretty high-end things, and it's life. You learn through the years, but my connections with farmers and ranchers and my education ultimately came from, what do I do with this? What do you do with this? What do you make at home to the farmer? What do you make with this particular potato? What does that look like for you, or your cultural influences from their family? And I gleaned information from them through the years of establishing, my different questions and my knowledge that I needed. And I highly suggest, go to your farmer's market, check in with your egg rancher, your chicken farmer, and say, what do you do with these eggs? How do you poach them?
Exactly. So part of the question, I think, was like a little bit, what's next? And right now I'm working on fiction. I'm fictionalizing a story of a woman who was almost invisible in the 16th century in Renaissance Florence. And the story is, she was, a prince's mistress, then wife. They were both occultists. End of story. And it's not the end of story. So I'm trying to talk about a powerful woman, scientist trying to find her voice in the Renaissance, and it's super challenging. So I have written 100,000 words, thrown that out. I keep writing and working and learning a lot. But the next nonfiction book I want to write is on a women's collective in Andhra Pradesh, India. And one of those central states. And it's a cooperative of about 30,000 women. There are some men in it now, and they have started with nothing, with zero, with a penny.
Wow.
And they are now bankrolling amazing projects, and it still is women controlled. And the collective is called the Timbuktu Collective. And I would like to write their story, and but hopefully the royalties from the book would go to the collective. So this would be a much shorter nonfiction work, and I just haven't pitched it yet.
Well, hopefully they're watching.
Yeah.
I look forward to reading that. That'd be fantastic. Cheers to powerful women.
Exactly.
Stories need to be heard.
Yes, I don't know if we have any other. I know we just have a few more minutes, and Lisa has been so nice to post the website where people can get the get recipes if we've got anything going on there. It's so funny because I was looking at the book and really didn't want to read anything that I had read in other. I've had a number of events, and just anyone who's read the book, maybe what I highlighted was I do love my very first image of the spider's web, but a lot of people don't like spiders, so I thought no, ixnay on the spider story and being like the agricultural web. And then I had a story on sugar, like when I wrote another book, Finding Balance, which is a book about empowering dancers who suffer from perfectionism and how can they find balance. But I took a very strong stand that fat was bad, sugar was good. And in this book, it's just the opposite. So I'm so sorry. So I talk about how I learn and how it's really important not to be swayed, but to stick to whole, informed, sustainable experience in science-based, reputable science based information. And then I kind of looked at the attitudes, like what is FoodWISE? It's really an attitude. Be a little feisty, be a little demanding, look out for your own welfare. I also had something in here about bread like what is bread? And this I just take from Stephen Jones, and he's like bread. So edible yeast plus edible whole grain flour make whole food bread. That's all you need. But processed flour plus BHT plus caramel coloring plus hydrogenated vegetable oil plus vital wheat gluten plus unspecified enzymes do not. So that's an example of whole. And then souffle, I say, cooking FoodWISE isn't whipping up a perfect souffle, although you might think so if you look at my Instagram account, thank you, Holly, or staging Instagram-worthy plates. It's learning to put together some tasty whole food dishes, even with just a few simple ingredients. And then I had one other comment here. My students sometimes wonder where I stand on food. They wonder if I am a low-fat devotee or a vegetarian or a raw foods missionary. Really, I am a proponent of one thing, mindful eating of mostly whole foods. I like to know where my food comes from. I like to think about the field or farm or farmer or fisher when I'm eating the food. I feel better knowing about those places and people. I believe that a main goal in life is to not be too hungry, but also to not overeat. In a house of teens, there was always that temptation with so much food around. I am selective about my sweets, but I'm especially fond of raw chocolates, velvety texture. Thank you, Evolve Chocolate. I believe unprocessed food is a good food choice. I believe in slow food, food that is good tasting, clean, and efficient. in terms of few waste produced and fair to all two-legged and four-legged beings, as well as those with fins. I didn't coin the good, clean, fair mantra. Slow Food Nation author Carlo Petrini did. I build on his ideas.
Thank you for writing a book that is synonymous with what we do, what I do in my career, and what I have strived to become better at and more able to explain the type of food that I prepare, which is intentional, as much as possibly from local farmers and the things that are within our own region. And thank you for making that voice be heard. And it's done very, very well.
Very sweet and kind. Thank you. But also, this is not to underestimate the challenges in doing this. You know, the challenges. We've talked a teeny bit about it in the restaurant business, and especially now with COVID. But I've got to say, COVID is the great revealer, not equalizer. It is the great revealer, and we are learning a lot. But our sources of information, our source in terms of what we can and can't do, and what we have access to, are vitally, critically important. So it's interesting how the WISE, this acronym, it works for almost everything because it's whole. I'm looking at the information source. Are people hunkering down to their ding dongs and Twinkies? And really, it's all about comfort food? Really? And so whole food restaurants, fresh food restaurants can just kiss it goodbye. Are people really not patronizing restaurants? Because I should say also that I have a vlog series. And if you just go to YouTube, actually, you'll find it. You'll find it if you go to gigiberardi.com. So I've made a vlog for every night in lockdown. I'm now over 260 vlogs. One night I forgot, which thank you, Cindy. She pointed out to me, my sister. But anyway, I did, but I made 2 the next day, so don't worry. So it's one for every night in lockdown, being the perfectionist that I am, as you can tell from my hair. And so what I did in those vlogs was I read a paragraph from the book each night. So if you can't afford the book, you can listen to the 260 vlogs. And I'm still working on it. And I'm almost done, though. I'm almost to the recipes. I may be doing something different. Sorry, Cindy. I might be doing something different when I get to the recipes. But anyway, what I do is I take a top news story from the day that oftentimes my partner has worked on with me, for me. And oh my gosh, the information on food since March 26th or March 25th, in terms of what people are eating, is mind-boggling confusing. So whole, informed, sustainable experience. What is your experience? Information is secondhand experience. And for many of us, that's all we have now. We've got to be critical.
Yes, we
Not believe everything we hear in terms of what people want to eat, what they don't, what they can, what they can't.
I don't know about you. I'm not one to be told what to do. So I certainly like to find my information and make sure that we're looking at all those choices that are out there for us that are of sound mind. Yeah.
Yes.
Awesome.
Hi.
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 Well, I've just been sitting back enjoying this. This has been great. I could listen to the two of you go back and forth just all night long. I won't ask you to do that. No. That'd be a long night for everybody. But thank you both so much.
Thank you for having me.
For being here tonight. This was great. And thank you to the audience for tuning in, and thank you for the great questions.
Remember to buy Gigi's book, Village Books. Remember to buy it.
And while you're there, go to then. Oh, look at that!
But with all my
nice. And don't forget, if you want to be the favorite relative, friend, whatever, get a copy of Gigi's book with a gift card to Evolve, and it's like perfect. So anyway, that's just my suggestion. So any any final words, ladies?
Gigi, you rock.
Um,
That's what I have to say. You rock.
no, I was just checked the question. The question was about the goat on the rooftop.
Yep, I put that in the chat because I was afraid it wasn't going to be seen in the.
Lovely.
All right. Well,
Claire,
I
thank you.
think
Christy,
that's
thank
it.
you.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
so much.
audience.
Yes, thank you, everybody. This was wonderful. Happy holidays. Everybody stay safe and well fed, and hopefully we'll see you soon.
Au revoir.